Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Hospital Stakeholder Engagement Meeting for July 2024, hosted by the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing. We have been hosting these meetings virtually only for the last 4 or so years. So let's go ahead and kick this one off. Next slide, please. Okay, so my name is Andrew Avalos. I am the Facility Rate Section Manager here at the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing. As usual, I will be hosting this meeting, so thank you all for joining today, and definitely appreciate your attendance and participation. We do find these to be a very useful vehicle for being able to deliver crucial information about upcoming rate changes or some operational processes. And really just use these meetings as an opportunity to collect feedback for ways in which we can improve our processes or ways that we can collaborate on future methodological updates as they relate to payments. So as usual, we really do count on your participation for making these meetings successful. And thank you once again. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, so about this meeting, we will be recording this meeting. You probably heard an alert about that earlier. As we usually do, whenever we finish up with these meetings, we work to post the recordings of the meeting on our hospital engagement meeting website. So all of that said, if you do plan to speak, when you do speak, please just let us know your name and give your name and the hospital or whichever entity that you represent. This can help us in terms of identifying who we might need to speak with as we review the recordings for any concerns or questions that are brought up. And also just gives us a little bit more transparency into who's asking for what, essentially. So all of that said, if you do speak as well, please make sure that you are in a quiet area if at all possible. That just really helps us preserve the integrity of these recordings. We often do refer to these recordings later on, so that would really just help us out. So thank you in advance. And of course, we do like to think of these meetings as a collaboration in a way. So if there are any agenda topics that you would like to see discussed in these meetings, we have Della Fan's email listed on this slide. Please get in touch with Della with anything that you might want to see in this meeting at least 2 weeks in advance prior to the following meeting, if only for the case that we might need some time to either do some research to answer any questions or, if appropriate, get the appropriate people on the call so they can prepare slides and otherwise just be prepared to speak on those requested topics. So as usual, definitely appreciate everybody's effort on that, and go ahead and move forward to the next slide. All right, so this slide just outlines the remaining scheduled meetings we have. As mentioned earlier, these are bi-monthly meetings. We have them. We try and have them on the first Friday of every odd month. So in case you forget that, we do always include notifications in our provider our provider bulletins. And we try and send regular emails out in case you've forgotten that this meeting was happening. And if you do want to be on the mailing list, we do have information on how to get on there with our hospital engagement meeting link down below. Okay, and next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to bring up show the topics that we have for today's meeting. We actually don't have a lot of different topics on here, just a couple of speakers, but of course, just a preview of what's to come. So all of that said, next slide. I think we're kicking it off to Diana for this one.
Yep. Andrew, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. I'm Diana Lamb. I'm the hospital inpatient hospital rates analyst. And I just wanted to give you a couple of updates. So for fiscal year 24-25 inpatient-based rates, I think everybody's aware by now that the legislature updated the state budget action with 2%. So we take last year's rates and we assign 2% onto them. You probably also got the newsletter email letting you know about the 30-day hospital stakeholder review of the rate posting, which ended on 6/29/2024. We will be implementing rates in the next few weeks and reprocessing hospital inpatient, outpatient, and specialty claims as necessary. The decision to implement rates for minor rates updates before CMS approval this time is to reduce administrative burden for both the department and hospitals alike. And just FYI, please know that we are still testing this process for minor rate updates. So it's uncertain whether we'll be able to do this in future years. And again, we're just trying to avoid reprocessing thousands and thousands of claims and just make it easier for everybody involved. Next slide, please. So the second topic I wanted to touch on is the version 40 APR-DRG update. We originally had planned for a 7/1/2024 update, but we sent a newsletter out on June 18th to alert everyone that we were going to postpone that until October 1st. The reason for the postponement is to allow additional time to obtain state plan authority and to reduce, again, administrative burdens because we would have to be reprocessing claims again. So I just wanted everybody to know the finalized APR-DRG weight table version 40 has been updated on the inpatient hospital payment page, and it's exactly the same APR-DRG weight table we've been talking about for version 40. The only thing I changed was put a new effective date on there. And just a reminder, just like Andrew said, if you haven't already signed up, please sign up to receive the hospital engagement meeting newsletters. It's really helpful for us to be able to communicate with you in between our meetings and or the provider bulletin, just with things that are coming up. Next slide, please. So just sort of a teaser for what's coming this fall. We're going to start rebasing our inpatient base rates this fall for state fiscal year 25-26. So we plan to use the same model we used in state fiscal year 23-24, and we will be refreshing it with new data. If you have any feedback about the process, we just want you to think about things and be sure to share it with us. So we're going to start talking about it during the September meeting. But just to let you know that the process will begin this fall. And just something for everyone to know, in preparation for the new rebasing, we've removed all the draft rebasing worksheets from the prior year on the inpatient hospital payment webpage. And the final one is still out there. It's just all the drafts that we made changes to as we were all working together to arrive at the methodology. So if anybody wants access to them, I'm happy to share them again. We were just trying to clean up the page because there was a lot of stuff on there. So anyway, if anybody needs that, or if you have any questions about any of what we've just talked about, you're welcome to ask now or contact me later if anybody has any questions. And if something comes to mind during the rest of the presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat and we can address those. But in the meantime, I think there's Andrew. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I realized that I accidentally clicked on the wrong button here.
Oh. Well, Andrew's next to talk.
All right. Thank you, Diana. Okay. And thank you, Della. So just as a quick follow-up to something that we discussed last May, I did bring to everybody's attention, and I believe this was also included in the email and provider bulletin, is that there was a duplicate payment issue that was identified specifically on the outpatient hospital claim paid through EAPGs. So this was an issue that went back to EAPG Go Live. And we did recently resolve this. I'll have more information on the next slide, but I just wanted to emphasize as one of the key components about this, and it's that as part of the drug weight development that 3M does for the EAPG methodology, the pricing that they use for the drugs is based off of median doses. So unfortunately, that means that the department would have been overpaying if a drug line was billed multiple times on the same claim as their intent to encompass the entirety of the doses for that visit. So I won't read everything that's on here. Some of that's recapped on the next slide. So let's go ahead and move on to that one. Okay. So as mentioned, as of today, this problem has been fixed in our system. Just wanted to provide a little bit of insight on what this looks like on a technical perspective. So to be clear, this was a problem with EAPG drugs, or those that are classified under type 6, and have to do with whenever the same HCPCS was billed multiple times on the same claim. So the fix is now in place. And what that looks like is, instead of paying any of those additional line items at the full EAPG payment, which was resulting in those duplicate payments, we are instead now allowing those to still be billed multiple times, but instead payment is going to be allocated based off of the units billed. So the payment itself won't exceed as if it were billed a single time on the claim. But for our reporting purposes and rebating purposes, we're just going to see those payments allocated differently now if they do show up multiple times. And this is in effect for those claims, or this will show up in EAPG pricing as of July 1, 2024. For those that maybe work on the more technical side of things, because this was a collaborative effort with Solventum or 3M, we were able to help identify any claims that would be priced in this way. So again, it's more technical, but if you are licensing the software and you're seeing drug lines now priced using the payment action code 37, which essentially says that the EAPG payment has been proportioned across multiple lines, then that indicates that yes, this is what you're seeing on that claim. So that's just one way of identifying that payment has been appropriated in that way. But as usual, if there are any questions on any of this, please feel free to reach out to me. Definitely, this is something that's new, and we tested this pretty extensively in the system, but definitely happy to answer any questions around that in the meantime. And we're also preparing an update to our billing manual to include this information, as well as how those payments would be proportioned. Okay. Real quick. So Stephanie Wood writes, are duplicate payments going to be recouped? So as I mentioned, this is for the July 1, 2024 claims moving forward. I know that our RAC team had a lot of responsibility in doing the previous recoupments. I don't have the exact details on what exactly their plans are, but I definitely suggest reaching out to the RAC team if you had experience with this issue, and they can provide more information on that. Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. So I wanted to follow up then on something that was brought up during our May meeting as well, having to do with the inpatient specialty drug carve-out. So if you recall, back in January of 2024, we obtained federal authority through a state plan amendment to be able to reimburse some of the Appendix Z specialty drugs outside of the DRG payment. For a little bit of history, we had a carve-out that was established many years ago for the outpatient side. We just only recently obtained the authority to be able to do this on the inpatient side as well. What we're working on in the department is a better means of operationalizing this on our side to hopefully reduce any errors in payments and make everybody's lives a little bit easier in terms of pricing these claims and ensure that we don't have to do as many adjustments on them. However, we did want to bring this to everybody's attention that this what we're proposing will probably require an update to how hospitals might bill for the specialty drugs. So I wanted to at least bring this to the attention of the attendees here that we're planning a billing manual update. We're trying to essentially mirror, if you have any experience billing some of the long-acting reversible contraceptives, the LARC carve-out, where there needs to be an inpatient claim that's billed prior to the outpatient claim, which contains that carve out. In this case, it would be one of those Appendix Z drugs. The big change that we're requesting here is that we want to make sure that not only is that outpatient claim, not only is there a corresponding outpatient claim that's billed, which corresponds to, of course, that inpatient administration, but we want to make sure that those are the only items on that outpatient claim, and that it includes the SE modifier. The big reason for having this bill different from our normal outpatient specialty drug carve-outs is that we want to be able to identify them, and then of course for auditing, or sorry, identify them specifically as inpatient, and then of course for auditing purposes, we just want to make sure that we already have that inpatient claim that is that has been billed. So again, we're working on updating our system to better operationalize the pricing of these claims and being able to handle them. But of course, we wanted to at least show to this community what we're thinking in terms of how this is going to be reflected in the billing process, and try and get out in advance and find out if there are any problems with this proposition for how hospitals bill. So that way we can think about that as we continue modifying our system, and maybe have to change course if this does present any operational issues. So we definitely appreciate your feedback on this front. Otherwise, this is how we're planning to this is how we want for hospitals to be able to build this. So please let us know if this presents any sort of operational problems on your side. Okay, and next slide. Okay, thank you. So just a little bit of housekeeping in terms of EAPG updates on our outpatient hospital side. We do have the EAPG module update. We usually do these quarterly. 3M did release the general availability on June 27th, which was installed into our MMIS the following day. This update accomplished a couple of things, one of which was applying the quarterly CPT HCPCS updates. So hopefully any of the claims that came through on or after 7/1, they should have been able to recognize the new code set changes. And then, of course, as mentioned earlier, the duplicate drug payment issue that was identified does have that fix now corresponding within that update. So please make sure that that is updated in your system if you are licensing that software. And then the second piece that I want to bring about on this slide is, of course, the rate increase. That has to do with the 2% increase, which was authorized through the long bill. So that's just one of our annual general appropriations changes that allowed for us to implement that. As Diana mentioned, we are implementing that into our system in the coming weeks. We are doing this ahead of state plan amendment approval. And this is largely because this is a very minor rate update. And I don't think that we can promise that this is something that would happen every year moving forward, as there's a certain amount of risk associated with that. But we do think that there are some operational benefits in that this reduces the administrative burden with having to reprocess mass volumes of claims. So in the near future, those rates should be in the system. And if any of those outpatient claims have been submitted with dates on or after July 1, 2024, that are paid on the new rate, that have been paid on the old rate, those will be identified for reprocessing. But we think that this is still a significant improvement from the typical process, which had required us to wait 3 to 6 months for state plan amendment approval and then adjusting that amount of claims. Okay, and then looking at the chat, Stephanie asked, do you have any guidance for modifier 76 when billing outpatient drugs? Let's see, I don't know if I have anything specifically on modifier 76. I don't know. Yeah, on modifier 76, I'm not positive whether there's any interaction on the EAPG side for that. I would need to check in on our billing instructions for that. And Stephanie, I would like to maybe follow up with you on that. And that's maybe something that we can bring, if not to the next meeting, then prior to that, we can add clarification to a billing manual or anything around that. But unfortunately, I just don't have that information for you right now. Okay. And then I see another message chat from Laura's regarding outpatient drug carved out for inpatient, received dials when our inpatient rate was updated and claims reprocessed. Duplicate due to outpatient claim on type of bill 131. Laura's, I am unfamiliar with that issue. I would definitely like to research that a little bit more. Is that something that you can, if you have any ICNs for the denied claims on that, I think we can do some research. But yeah, I guess I'm a little confused as to why they would be denying in the first place, but sometimes things happen in the system that I'm not aware of, and that wouldn't surprise me if that would be the case here. So if you don't mind following up with some ICNs, for example, we can do some research and follow up and figure out what the exact problem is. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and next slide, please. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up here has to do with our future plans for outpatient hospital payment. So I know that we discussed this back in May. We hadn't received a whole ton of feedback on this one, but just to kind of recap what our options were for drug reimbursement in the outpatient hospital were in general. We did want to propose, both the average sales price and average acquisition costs as alternatives. However, we didn't really receive too much feedback. I know that those have been discussed in those meetings regardless. Being cognizant of the fact that we also need to be performing regular EAPG version updates, I did want to mention that we are just starting work on that. A big part of that is if we focus on the ASP or AAC question for too much, then we end up losing sight and we'll fall behind schedule in performing these regular updates. If you recall, back in January of 22, we had performed an EAPG rate or EAPG methodology update, and that hadn't been done in several years. And that resulted in what we felt were some unpredictable payment swings that we had to adjust base rates in order to accommodate a lot of that. We feel that by regularly introducing these version updates, we're able to not only pay for more services in a way that's in alignment with how outpatient hospital care is being delivered today, but also just reduce those significant swings in payments whenever we're forced to perform a version update because the REM or Solventum no longer supports some of those outdated versions. So along those lines, that does present us some opportunities to review outpatient hospital payment more generally, check on things like, whether it still makes sense to move forward with how we apply modifiers and maybe review some other things in there. But I also wanted to highlight that this is still an opportunity for us to perform a concurrent review of the EAPG drug payments and see if there are any significant changes that are going to happen when moving from version to version. So just as we did with the APR DRG version update, we do intend to produce some figures that we can present in these meetings when we have enough, when we're closer to some finalized numbers around that. We also want to use that as an opportunity to have some more feedback on EAPGs more generally. But I think the most important thing here, though, is that even though we're moving forward with this EAPG version update, we still want to be cognizant about feedback on the average sales price and average acquisition cost alternatives, or truthfully, any alternatives for paying for drugs outside of EAPGs. Currently, our plan is to stay with EAPGs to this update, but definitely want to still hear, what are some of the problems, and also recognize, these are alternatives, but those also might come with their own problems as well. So I wanted to use a little bit of time here to solicit some feedback on this specific topic, hear if there are any recommended alternatives. And then, of course, if you don't have feedback right now or need time to prepare, my email address is right here. I want to make sure that we are still hearing a lot of the concerns about the direction. And of course, what would be most helpful with that is some recommended alternatives or solutions. But of course, like I said, if you don't have feedback right now, this is something that we are always welcome to hear about. We definitely want to hear about it here. It does make our lives easier when we hear about these sorts of problems through these meetings or as a follow-up to these meetings, rather than when we realize that there's a significant problem that we need to more immediately address, because that makes a lot of what we think of as our operational work, or what we like to do as part of our regular work, like base rate updates or version updates, that gets delayed. So definitely, if there is any feedback that you have, that is 100%, you should definitely bring that to us. Okay. And next slide, please. So the last part of this presentation, I just wanted to put out some regulatory updates and start bringing this to everybody's attention, so we have better transparency over these timelines. I included some of these here, even though we already are working on establishing these early, but these are just the various state plan amendments that we have submitted as they relate to our methodologies. So the top three there are some pretty routine ones. Again, those are largely arrived at through the changes in appropriations through our General Assembly. And again, we are implementing those rates early ahead of approval. But also, I think the last one I did want to highlight, we do require a state plan amendment in order to accommodate the APR-DRG version 40 update that Diana mentioned earlier. As with some of our procedural ways of doing that, we do have to reissue the public noticing for that, which means that we aren't able to submit the state plan amendment until then. We've already worked with our compliance team, and there should be a public notice that goes out on July 25th on this. And this should mirror the language from when we had previously issued public noticing, when we had anticipated a July implementation date for this version update. So like I said, this is mostly for adding transparency, and then in the future we will include dates like when we submitted the SPA, when CMS's timelines are up, just to get a better idea on how to anticipate when we can begin implementing some of these larger methodological changes. Okay, and then next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, it was a light meeting agenda for today, but I think that there's still some items that we would definitely appreciate some feedback on. So I just wanted to open it up here if there are any ongoing questions or concerns or recommendations for how we can move forward with some of these issues that we've brought forth today. So go ahead and just give it a minute, or maybe about 30 seconds, just to hear if there's any feedback. Um, All right, I see a message from Greg, reach out to pharmacy. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Greg. And not seeing anything else come up, but just as usual, we always want to make sure that we're getting this feedback from hospitals. And if you want to move forward to the next slide, please. I've included all of our email addresses. Please feel free to email us with any concerns or questions, whether it pertains to this meeting or just more generally. Like I said, we want to make these a collaborative effort. So whenever we hear from you, we try and integrate those topics into our meetings. So definitely, like I said, it is an open door. So go ahead and move towards closing this meeting out. I definitely appreciate everybody's attendance here today and look forward to hearing from you and probably speaking with you next September at the latest. So thank you so much.